Let's move back to Ukraine. Let's get some experts in because I think as it moves this conflict into its next phase, I think we all need to understand what the Ukrainian people are dealing with. According to my next guest, retired Army General, Major General Mick Ryan, the battle for Kyiv will be the largest scale urban battle in 75 years, and it'll be a humanitarian disaster. Mick Ryan is an expert in this area, a military man by training, joins me now from Canberra. Mick, thank you for your time. Give us a sense of what we're going to see over the next few days and weeks in Kyiv, because it now moves into a very built-up urban environment. We saw this in places like Mosul, even with the firepower of the allies there, the US and others. There was a lot of challenges once you get into these built-up urban apartment settings. What's likely going to happen in the next few days?
Well, thanks, Peter. Clearly, the Russians will continue operations in the south and the east, but Kyiv is their main effort. It is the city that they want to capture. It's a city that they feel they must capture. They will seek to surround it first, both to deny the Ukrainian defenders aid coming from outside, that's humanitarian and lethal aid, but also to deny Ukrainian soldiers escaping. Once the Russians have surrounded it, if indeed they can do that, and that will take tens of thousands of soldiers, they will commence a brutal, firepower heavy on the city of Kyiv, and it will kill many, many Ukrainian defenders and civilians.
The issue of civilians and a concern, I think a real concern, that there are banned weapons like cluster bombs that's been alleged used in this conflict by the Russians. How can the world community allow that to occur?
Well, I've seen some evidence of cluster bombs, some evidence even of thermobarics either being prepared to use or used in other parts of this campaign. But banned weapons aren't the only things that will kill civilians in large numbers. Just normal artillery, rockets and dumb bombs dropped from Russian aircraft and rockets fired from helicopters will kill both soldiers and civilians in large numbers. We need to focus here on how do we protect these civilians and how do we ensure that we can continue to aid the Ukrainian defenders who have shown tremendous heart and courage from the president all the way down.
I'll ask you then to tell us how we protect the civilians, but the point you're making there about Kyiv now being surrounded and a heavy presence of Russian soldiers, the world has woken up. There's been a lot of money committed now via NATO for lethal aid. How do you get the lethal aid in? If we've thought about this or acted a month or so ago, you obviously had supply routes in. How do we get it in there? Can we get it in there? And the point about civilians.
Well, the first thing is we keep the western border of Ukraine open. Ukraine is proximate to several other countries through which aid can flow, and that's been flowing and will continue to flow. We need to ensure that the Russians aren't able to interfere with that, and the Ukrainians, I'm sure, are on top of that. The Russians have not yet surrounded Kyiv. That will be a massive undertaking in itself, and I'm sure the Ukrainians will seek to keep open corridors into Ukraine for aid, but also corridors out of Kyiv so they can evacuate civilians and wounded soldiers.
What's interesting we've seen out of this is a sense that the Russia or Putin underestimated the resistance of the Ukrainian people. Now, let's assume Russia succeeds in part and it occupies Ukraine. How long does that go on for? What does that look like? And it's clear, I think, from the way in which the president and others have acted early in this conflict, it will not be an easy undertaking. There'll be a growing resistance. Does Russia occupy Ukraine longer term? What happens?
Well, it certainly is a David and Goliath fight that we're seeing play out in Ukraine here. And there's a strong possibility that the Russians may defeat the Ukrainians in a conventional fight. However, the way they will do it is destructive, it's brutal, it's bloody, and there'll be thousands and thousands of Ukrainian deaths. The Ukrainians will hate the Russians. There's 44 million of them, and I don't see them just rolling over now. They resisted the Nazis in the Second World War. The Ukrainians then resisted the Soviets in the wake of the Second World War. They have form in resisting the Russians, and I would see them doing so again. And there's been some very good scenario analysis on insurgencies that could go from months to years in the wake of a Russian conquest of Ukraine.
Putin's put his own reputation on the line with this war. He's built it up. It's a huge domestic issue for him. A lot of face he has to lose if he doesn't succeed. And then we had those threats in recent days about nuclear options. Give us a sense of where you think, there's a lot of speculation about his mental health, where you think Putin is right now.
Well, I can't speculate on his mental health, of course, but certainly he has been pursuing what some academics have called a delusional strategy of Ukraine as a non-state. I mean, these are crazy ideas that are just nonsensical. He needs a quick resolution in this war because of international pressure, because the Ukrainians are making his military look stupid, and frankly, the Russian people are starting to get information about what is going on here. And they will soon see a flow home of coffins. So he's in real trouble. Time is not on Putin's side.
Brilliant analysis. Thank you for your time, Major General Mick Ryan. That was excellent. It helps us get our head around it all.
Thanks,
we'll
Peta.
come back, obviously, to Major General Ryan in the future. Thank you.